All right, welcome to our YouTube audience. We are in a discussion already, and I'm just talking, wrapping up our little conversation that we had prior. But I wanted to say, whenever we look at these dating of certain events in the Hebrew Bible, it's for me, and I think most people who are honest about this have to say we can't maybe put a date on it. You don't do that, Damon. I don't do that for the most part. But we can often order things like we go, well, this text clearly looks like it's earlier than another text, and here are the reasons why. So that's the first stage I think that we have to do. And what I find, at least my understanding of the text of the Pentateuch, is that we have different strata. Some of these sources, like Exodus 32, I'm not suggesting that this was written way late, but I'm certainly suggesting that it's later than the core document that we see reflected in Deuteronomy's text. And if we just say simply because one is in the first person, the other is a third person account, and it has traces of anachronism and so forth, that's the main thing I want to do, is separate between, if we can, just major blocks. So I don't necessarily say, I think it's easy to say, harder to prove that two texts, one with anachronism, one without, that they're from the same period. Now, that doesn't mean I don't see them as both being ancient. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think that you can have the Exodus account can be very ancient, but it's clearly got things. That's the reason I put them side by side. By the way, I encourage everyone to take that document, mark it up, challenge it, say, well, I don't see this. I don't see, because all I want to do in this document and what I want to do in my forthcoming, the work that I'm working on week by week, slowly, is to align the events, the text that describe the events around the life and laws of Moses. Again, from the time we meet Moses until the end of Deuteronomy. That means none of Genesis is in this work. So bottom line, that's what I'm working on. And that's it. That's all I got. Joshua Chisholm, Brother Joshua. What's happening, man?
Well, just enjoyed listening to the study this morning. How are you?
Man, I'm telling you, I feel wonderful. Looks like the prayers of the people so far have held off the major storms. And I mean that. I think people probably really did pray when I asked them to, because at least according to the Weather Channel, looked kind of scary there for a little bit.
In the last couple of days, it could have gotten bad, but I definitely think our lips to God's ears.
Hey, we want some rain. We just don't want the, hopefully everyone here is safe.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. What else, man? What you thinking? What are you looking at?
So I had an obscure observation, and this is a really minor detail, but this is the kind of things that I pick up on after listening to you for 5 years. I like these little details.
All right.
I think you might like it, dude. You probably thought about this, but it's still interesting. If nobody else has thought about this before, or if it's not interesting, then you feel free to shut me down. You get this idea in your head that when Moses is carving out the second set of tablets, maybe he was using a chisel. How do you do that with your hands,
Right.
So it reminds me of this instruction, which I think is from the priestly source, that you don't use a tool, stones, when you're building an altar, otherwise you'll defile it.
Yeah.
So this is just an interesting observation to me, because it brings up the question: if we're following the rules, did Moses just pick up two rocks that looked like tablets, or did he actually carve them out of the rock with a metal tool, or I'm assuming something harder than the granite that it's made out of. I'm also assuming what type of stone it is. So there's a lot of assumptions there.
But those are cool things to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, because it makes you wonder. It's like, okay, well, if metal tools or any kind of a tool would defile an altar that's made of stone, that's just a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
With the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, I've seen different, of course, the rabbinic literature has all sorts of ideas. Ideas. People like us, these rabbis are like us. They're sitting around and this is what they think about all day. And hey, I wonder what it was made. What do you think the two stone tablets were made out of? And, some say sapphire. There are different ideas behind, and how big were they? See, we don't get all those details. It's impressive what we do get in terms of, according to the priestly source, they're written on both sides, on this and that, it says in the Hebrew, written by the finger of God. What does that mean? It's fascinating to think about, but how were they made is another idea. Now you've got me thinking, because we have examples, say, of like Sumerian tablets. And one of the things that I've considered, because especially as I work through the text, we got Exodus and Deuteronomy, we see the art where Moses is holding up these huge, big old tablets, like each one is as
from the
big as a
movies.
stop sign. Yeah. And he's got them both. And what do they really look like? Are they that big? Where do we get the idea they're curved on the top? There's nothing that says that, right? They could be literally this size, They could be something like this, or,
Something you can hold in one hand.
Yeah.
And I think that the details are important. I really do. And if we had more accurate, historical information about the events, I think that they would be still important for us today.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? But from a textual standpoint, I think the content's the most important thing, because that's the thing that's been carried on the longest.
Exactly.
But by that same token, we've got all this other information about not using tools on altars to defile them.
Yeah.
So it just sticks with me. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
What's the implication there if he did use a tool?
Yeah.
And I've also been going down the rabbit hole on some of these ancient conspiracy theories and ancient technology. Some of the ancient people had technology that we still can't figure out how they did it.
Oh, yeah.
And they were able to carve stone, like, even going back to because we don't know when the pyramids were built, but whatever they had, they were able to carve some of this very, very hard rock without the use of physical tools. They were using some kind of energy technology. Mm-hmm. So that also gets me to thinking about what's being described in the Exodus and Deuteronomy accounts.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fascinating, even if you just read the text, like forget all the academic and the various different source criticisms. And if we read Exodus 31:18, Exodus 32, verse 15 and 16, Deuteronomy 9 verses 10 and 11, we get the idea that somehow, some way, God takes stone, is all it says is 2 tablets, luach, of stone, Evan. And that could be any number of different type. We don't know what kind of rock. We don't know how big the tablet was. But what we do know is that with God's finger, now some would argue for a different interpretation there based on like Exodus 8 and the story where this is the finger of God, say the Egyptian magicians. And that has a good ring to it. Yeah. So it might be something like that. But literally, it says on the way it describes it, and I'm just using this, don't get hung up. I'm not saying he had an iPhone versus whatever. But it says on this and this. The Hebrew said, like I think most English translations say, he wrote on the 2 sides, this side and the other side. And that's what it means. But so it's like you could take this tablet, whatever it is, it might just be a rock, but it's written on both sides. So what I wanted to do one time, and I've got a file cabinet that has all my crazy stuff that I think about, and I did a study on, let's look at the Bronze Age and what type of tablets have we found from Sumeria, from, any of this, any ancient setting about the same time. And one of the things that we find is that is something that we've got examples of. And if it follows more the Sumerian, now, that's a long way from Egypt to Sumeria, but we find very similar working in the region, the Levant and surrounding areas. So who knows? Maybe it is smaller. And how big does it have to be? If you take the
It just
10
has to be big
words,
enough to get the words on there.
that's right. And in Hebrew, it's very short, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's all I got. I just think it's an interesting idea. Because and just, for the last point, when I read the text the first time when I was a kid, when it said both sides like that in English,
Yeah.
it's 2 tablets. So, and I'm holding the book in front of me. So, thinking with a, 20th century mind, I'm like, okay, well, it's written on this side and it's written on this side, left and right, like a book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like written on this side, written on this side.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting thought. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. No, and so now your question, this has got me thinking, like, what type of tools were used in the Bronze Age? I have several books on, like, ancient scribes and so forth, but I don't know if they go back, say, before the Iron Age, like, because we know, particularly in the Iron Age, we have examples of various ostraca, writing on pottery. We have clay tablets, particularly from the East. But now I'm interested to think of,
That's
how
why so many
how did they make
historians give the Bible such a hard time, is because they don't have a lot of good evidence for the kinds of tools that the people used during the early, middle, and late Bronze period.
Yeah,
And because they don't have that information, they want to throw away all of our religious text.
right.
I mean, at least that's the way I think that they're doing it.
Yeah, yeah,
Probably have other reasons for it, but you know, if they can't explain what they don't know, then everything's wrong.
yeah, yeah. Karen says Solomon used a worm, and I have read accounts of that. So it could be some magical worm.
I was going to say he must have had some tough teeth.
That's right. That's some of those Australian worms, I think. Good stuff. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
man.
What else? What else, Joshua?
That's all I got. I'm going to hang around with y'all for a little bit. I've got family calling me downstairs, but I'm going to keep the audio on and probably put my earphones on so I can listen to y'all.
All right. Well, if you have to go, I appreciate your time, and tell Ruth I said hey, and you guys have fun with the family. That's what today's really all about.
You there?
All right, brother. Thank you, man. And here we go, brother JJ. What you got for us, man?
Oh man, here we go. You got me?
I got you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Yeah,
shalom.
something that you and Joshua were talking about just made me think a second ago that when they left Mitzrayim with such urgency, were they thinking of, hey, I might have to carve some stone tablets out of this thing? What kind of tools do I need to bring with me as I'm making my way on there? So
Yeah.
But I had 4 things that had written down, and there's no other hands up right now. So I'm just gonna go down my list till I see a couple
air it out, man.
things.
Come on.
All right. Hey, so the first thing was I know every 2 or 3 times I think I had a fact check in there, so I just wanted to make sure that I understood. As I was following along with Deuteronomy 9:16 and Exodus 32.8, which was page 4 of the document there.
Okay. All right.
And I think you had explained, you had mentioned about the golden calf being different than a metal image. And when I just looked it up following through, it looks like the same Hebrew words for it. So
it is
not a major point, but
just to qualify, I just show the English as being different, but in my note, I think I have in both accounts a molten image is made, mem samek kav. Hey, see, so here at this point, only Exodus tells us the image of a calf. See Deuteronomy 9:16. Now, this has been a little bit since I made this. I'll go back and look at those, but I think that what we have here in both cases in Exodus and Deuteronomy is that same word for molten is used, but only if I'm reading my note right, Exodus tells us that molten thing is a calf, Ayin Gimel Lamed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have Ayin Gimel Lamed in both 9:16 and 32:8.
Okay. All right. Let me double check that. While we're looking at it, let's
That's
just.
what I'm saying. Double fact check. Because I'm not the greatest again. I've only
No,
been
I mean
studying
it
this for
could
a
very
short
well
time, but
be. Exodus. Let me look at Exodus
yeah.
32, verse 8, and in the Hebrew, Egel. All right. Yep. There it is. Okay. So Exodus. Okay. Well, I said that in the note. Now the test is. Here's a test. This
Yeah.
is a good fact
Oh
check.
boy.
Deuteronomy 9:16. Now let's see. Here you go. Roll, drum roll. Look at that. It's there too. It's there too. So let me see if my note is my note wrong. Let's see. Exodus tells us the image is of a calf. Both of them say that. All right, I'm making a note
Yeah.
right here. Good fact check. So it's both say, neither say golden calf, but both
Right, I
say
agree with that.
Egel Masecha.
Yeah.
All right, I'm writing that right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and I going through, I didn't even see the note right there. I was just kind of going through, trying to keep the text in front of me, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't make sense. If I get a chance, I'll make that note there. So
Oh, wait a minute. I'm
we got
right
there.
after all. Okay.
You may be.
Actually, no, I'm not. But I want to add another point because notice my document says see Deuteronomy 9:16 where it agrees with Exodus. So
There
that's
you
what
go.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at 9:16,
There you go.
not
Yeah.
9:12. All right. Either way, I got it on the
Okay.
list.
Yeah. So I see. I agree with that. Not in 9:12,
Okay.
but 9:16 where it jumps ahead. So yeah, and that's what kind of took me a while to kind of flop back and forth to kind of figure it out. So alrighty. I guess the next thing was and this is kind of going along with a lot of the theories that we're talking around, but I don't see if I know Aaron and Moses grew up separately essentially for at least 40 some years or so, but we know Aaron is Moses's brother, but I never see too many references, especially as we're going through all this, where he says, my brother, this or my brother that,
Yeah.
and so I don't know if that's just something as part of the, Doc Hypo kind of situation that we're looking at with everything and how it differs from Deuteronomy.
Let me bring up two things. Number one, the family of Moses is an incredibly difficult subject, and what it appears is going on. There are times where, like anyone, forget all this academic stuff. If you pick up your Bible, you open the book of Exodus. Sometimes, if you read the story of Moses' sister and she's following along in the river, and you're like, oh, that's Miriam. We know little girl Miriam, and that's Moses' older sister. We know all these things from other texts. But the same thing with Aaron. Aaron is his older brother, right? So when you start figuring in like what you know from off the top of your head, what's really interesting is when do we know that? So for instance, you read it from the beginning and you start noticing that there are things that don't jive. And so, well, we don't have to get into it here, but there are family questions that I have. Like it appears that some of this is later written in, and there are good reasons to think that.
Yeah.
But either way, it's fascinating. The family of Moses. And by the way, later, the family of Moses is played out altogether. We get that, by the time we get to the book of Judges, where it says that a son of Moses is functioning as a priest. And the scribes can't have that because you have to have Aaron's sons only as priests. So the name is changed from Moses to Manasseh.
Oh,
and the scribes admit it.
Yeah. I think they saw that. All righty. So let me just go and kind of continue down the list here.
Yep.
Because everyone's giving me time. This is a blessing today. I'm waiting for Todd and Angel to get up there and say something actually compelling. But hey, so Deuteronomy 10:2, I think I had a note on that was page 10. I just made a note that Did Aaron make the Aron? Did he make that wooden box up? Did Moses make the Aron box on the mountain? You know, when it says, let me go to page 10. What do I got here?
Oh, yeah, because it says, and come up to me on the mountain and make an ark of wood.
Yeah. So not only did, is it different than, Bezalel and Aholiab, they couldn't even go up the mountain, you know. But it was a thought as we were going through here. And
good question. Keep going though. Look at verse 2, and I will write on the tablets the words that you were on the first tablets that you broke, and you shall put them in the ark. So I made an ark of acacia wood, and I cut 2 tablets of stone like the first, and went up the mountain with the 2 tablets in my hand. I don't know. It could go either way. It almost looks like here on page 11, Deuteronomy 10:3, that he makes the ark.
Yeah.
But either way, maybe he goes up a little ways and does this, and then goes the rest of it. I don't know.
He went up until he found some trees.
That's right. And by the way, when we go, I think you're still scheduled to go with us on the trip, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Have you been before, by the way?
I have not.
Okay. One thing we're going to notice in that desert region, and I know Dave and Patty, many others have been, and Doug Martin and others can tell you, that in this desert region, we're going to go to some of these places in modern Israel, which were not part of Israel according to the biblical land, I guess you would say. But acacia is pretty prevalent, and it's the only kind of wood that you could use in that region. There's just nothing else. So, in fact, I have in my Torah cabinet, I got a Yachad for my Torah scroll that I made.
Okay.
Kind of whittled it out of acacia. You can get you a piece of acacia.
There you go. I do the same. I don't have a Torah scroll yet. They're a little pricey for just a regular guy. So
hey, keep going,
all
man.
Right. All right. Last thing. Thank you guys for letting me talk too. So, I guess the last thing that I wrote down was a note on Deuteronomy 24. I know that we did that a few weeks ago, and it was just a quick note going back to page 140 or so in your Torah tablet.
Okay. Deuteronomy 24 or Exodus 24?
I'm sorry, Exodus 24. I wrote Deuteronomy, but I sure meant Exodus.
In what page?
Because you don't have the Deuteronomy Torah tablet out yet.
Right. What page?
Well, I think it starts on 140 for that. But I had a note, and you might not even need to go there, but that talks about Moses writing the words, right? Moses writing the words, and he talked, he shared God's words with the assembly there. So it's just one more thing. It's like, did he get the words and share them with the people from however he had them fashioned there on his scroll or parchment or whatever, and then later he went up the mountain? Or is this a conflicting thing? I didn't take a chance to look at the sources and the timelines, how they all kind of put together. But it's just one more thing that just popped in my head is, as we continue these studies, it just, the way people are sharing and different things, it just makes the neurons kind of flow in my old head.
Well, let me throw something back at you on that, because that's fascinating. What you see there in Exodus 24, it's one of 7 references, all third person, to Moses writing something. All right? So remember, one of the things that the priestly writer, it's third person, but look, I'm willing to concede that some of even today, let me throw this out there for people who might be more fundamental in their approach than I am. So if you look at Exodus 32, Exodus 24, Exodus 32, Exodus 34, compared to Deuteronomy 9 and 10, like we did, and like this question or statement applies to, you get the understanding that a third person is writing Exodus 24. So somebody tells us in Exodus 24:4, And Moses wrote all the words of Jehovah and rose up early in the morning and built an altar under the mount, 12 pillars. So you could almost say, if you're a fundamentalist, apologist, whatever, you're looking at, you go, oh, someone is seeing that. And forgive my iPad, but they're going, and Moses wrote all the words of the Lord. And see, he's telling right to left. He's writing right to left. Okay. But again, what are the words of the Lord? Now, this is after the account of the giving of the law at Horeb. So here's something I think about. Same text and the same thought you're going down. Let's bear with me on this Moses scroll idea. In the Moses scroll, we have an account of the 10 words, and it strangely enough mimics, if I can use that word, what we see on lapidary examples in the time. What was written in antiquity was written on stone with interpuncts, and this was striking. This feature in the 19th century, when people saw this, they said, could we be looking at a master forgery, somebody trying to pull the wool over our eyes, or are we actually looking at a copy of what Moses saw on the stone tablets? So one point, like there's a little bit of confusion between the sources in Exodus. Did Moses see the 10 words? Now we know in Exodus and Deuteronomy, he goes up to get the tablets later. But did he see them written? Remember, we kept seeing those texts. Make sure you do this according to what you saw on the mountain. So I wonder if that's how it made it into the text. And if people say, I don't know about your silly book, Ross, I just read Exodus and Deuteronomy. Okay, so how did that get in there, right? Did Moses see it? Anyway, I'm with you. One of 7 references to Moses writing something, and I wonder if it could be those 10 words. And if it is it written with interpuncts like we see it on stone? I think so.
And book ended with Anohi Elohim Elohecha.
Yeah.
I love it. All righty.
You got to keep going. No one else is raising their hand.
Oh goodness, I don't know what else I got over here to share. I know it's just a great class, and I'm excited about going down in April, and I'm excited about the trip in November, and I don't know who else is going, but man, it just sounds like every day I hear something or read something. It just sounds like it's going to be more and more of an amazing trip. So,
well, I'm really glad that you're coming. I see a lot of names and faces on the screen that already have made plans to come. You can, if you want to come and you haven't yet registered, I need you to register because we have limited our venue, the building I'm now in. We're in a little bit smaller space. I know JJ and Karen and some others were at the previous meeting, and you might have seen our other place was bigger. Miriam was there, Ronnie. Anyway, I could name everybody that was there. But the point is, we're in a smaller space now. So I need you send in your registration. You can register on rossknichols.com. It says at the top 2025 conference. That's the easiest thing I can give you. It's a United Israel World Union Conference, but we need to get that registration in. And one thing I'm doing now is I'm working on the program. And I want the program to be, we'll have a few lectures, but I also want to do a whole bunch of discussion. Like one of the things I have in mind, and I'm going to be messaging you, JJ, and a few others, I want to have sort of a panel, like where do we go from here? Like what does this do to our faith, to that we're looking at these things through a different window? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because I get messages from people who are struggling, who really they want to know the truth. It's not like they're just scared to look at things, but there's some concern. They're like, well, wait a minute, 6 months ago or a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 days ago, I believed that Moses wrote all of these things, and now you're picking apart my faith. And I want to have some candid conversation about that. I want people, look, at the last conference, I had a good friend of mine who told me, like, was tense when he told me, he was like, I have to walk away from you at times, and I got it. I understand where he's coming from. He wasn't being mean. He was saying, it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want people to have that candid conversation. I think most people that know me know that I want people to push back and challenge and question, and that's the whole point of this.
Yeah. No, and I
Anyway.
have, other study groups that I'm in, and I get the same thing. It's the same thing. It's like I'm afraid that, one of these days they're just gonna boot me out and not let me back. But I just keep trying to challenge with with what's in the text, and with a heart full of love. If I'm
Yeah.
challenging, if we're challenging with a heart full of love for God and love for the text, then I think we're in the right place.
Yeah.
So, and that's I think what we have to think of at the end of the day.
Well, it's certainly a safe place for asking questions, and that's one of the things. It's not like the beauty of what I think we're trying to do here is I don't have a list that says, here's what you have to do to be part of what we're doing. You don't, there's not a checklist. You don't have to believe everything that I say on Saturday morning. God help you. But, take the challenge, weigh it out, and I'm going to push back too. I won't push back, but like you'll hear me sometimes, I go, well, hang on. Why do you say that? And it's not because I don't agree with something, but it's because I want to know maybe I'm missing something here. So that's the reason we do. That's the reason we do what we do.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the time. All right, I'll go ahead and let go and give somebody else the opportunity. As I called it, they're up next. So
there you go. Look at that. All right, brother.
Thanks.
Thank you, man. And Todd and Angel, how's it going, friends? Shabbat shalom.
Good, brother. Enjoyed the class as always. Mine is a little bit off topic.
All right. All right.
It's still in there, though. In chapter 31, it just kind of stuck out to me when he talks about obeying the Sabbaths.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm having a hard time with part of it because it says, those who profane it, I will put to death.
Yeah.
Well, how come everybody's still walking around today?
Right.
Why would they? I realize it's a priestly thing, but I don't know. That stuck out to me. I was kind of like, what? Why would y'all put that in there if it's not even happening today?
Yeah.
That was just my little thought.
Well, let me get to so we have an example in the text where, remember the story of the person who was gathering sticks on the Sabbath, and the people didn't know what to do with that person. You know what I'm talking about? Hold on just a second. Let me look this up. And I want to make this point. I'm going to look this up so we can talk about it. Numbers chapter 15. In Numbers chapter 15, we have this story where a person is gathering up sticks on the Sabbath. And if I recall, let me see if I'm right here. If I recall, they were unsure what to do. Let me open that. 15, I think it's verse 32, if I'm not mistaken. And okay. What you just told me is that in Exodus it says if you break the Sabbath, you're going to die. All right. So here in Numbers 15:32, when the Israelites were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. Those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses, Aaron, and the whole congregation. They put him in custody because it was not clear what should be done to him. Well, wait a minute now. Why is it not clear? All right. Then the Lord said to Moses, the man shall be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him outside the camp. The whole congregation brought him outside the camp, stoned him to death, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then it goes into, oh yeah, by the way, let's talk about fringes for a minute.
Yeah.
The interesting thing to me is if he's out working in the field and that was known in Exodus, I mean, this is a question as much as anything. This is something that I would flag and I would say, now hang on just a minute. Could it be that Numbers 15 represents this interpolated idea that death is brought for violating the Sabbath? Like you said, some of these texts say God will kill them. And yet people work on, Israelite children of Israel. It's like, are they getting killed? Are they dropping dead? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. It's like you said, that when you run across other parts of the text, it's like there's a hole opened up right there. There's no answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know why that stuck out to me when I saw it. I was kind of like, so those who aren't doing the Sabbath day are still walking around.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just have a hard time of thinking of Yahovah being one who just goes zap.
Yeah.
Not obeying.
Well, we have so many other texts which suggest that you have blessings for obedience and curses. This is like from divine. Blessings for obedience, curses for disobedience. But they issue from God, right? And not just in the Moses scroll, but we have text in the Hebrew Bible that present that. Like, you're blessed if you do this, you're cursed if you do that. Well, that's one thing, but why, Jonah often points out in some of our discussions, why would you say this brings about a curse? Oh, by the way, and you're going to get killed with rocks. It's like, okay, well, I'm not really worried about the curse if you're going to stone me to death with rocks, It's kind of a moot point, right? So it could be that later, this is just for discussion's case, it could be later that when men were trying to uphold these religious ideas and enforce religious laws because people weren't getting struck down for violating the Sabbath, they said, thus says the Lord, kill them with stones. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that could very well be what happens, is the death penalty is something later. Okay? Just an idea.
Well, that's a good idea, too.
Yep. See, the idea is that Sabbath is a time, well, as one rabbi put it, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath.
Right.
Could be. Rest. Yeah. What else? What else you thinking?
That's just the main. That was the point I just wanted to make. That just stuck out to me for some reason.
You got to keep going until the next hand comes up. You, Angel.
I'm not as good as JJ.
Maybe JJ jump back in then. No, but I what I want to do is when I read these various texts, I want to look at, again, if you just take Exodus, then Leviticus, then Numbers, now there's some overlap there. In fact, Numbers is very interesting because it gives us a date in the opening, and then we find that it's not necessarily in chronological order, because by the time we get to chapter 9, we realize that chapter 9 and verse 1 through 16 actually goes at the beginning. It comes before what we read in Numbers chapter 1. So this is kind of a mix mash of different stories, ancient stories that are mixed together or whatever. But we have overlay between Exodus and Numbers and sometimes Deuteronomy. Give you another example. And we have to look at these horizontally. So for instance, when I look at the story of the spies, Numbers chapter 13 and 14. You compare that with Deuteronomy 1, they don't agree. They give different accounts. And so that's what we have to look at, and we're going to see this over and over. So, for instance, if I do a class on the Sabbath now, or if I do a study on Shabbat, I'm going to read that text that you brought up, right? I'm going to look at Exodus 31, but I'm also going to think about where else do we get Sabbath and death penalty. And that made me think while you were describing your question, it made me jump to Numbers, because that's where I said, now, hang on just a minute. Why is it that in Numbers chapter 15, why do they not know what to do with somebody that breaks the Sabbath, where in Exodus it already told us? See? So anyway, basically it just makes us look at the different text and compare and contrast. That's what it's all about.
But it's like you mentioned about the guy picking up the sticks. That's really, if you think about it, that's no difference than Yeshua and his disciples out in the field picking the wheat.
Yeah.
Have a day, and a couple of Pharisees basically giving a crap about it.
Yeah.
They didn't stone him.
Right. What's going on with this?
Yeah, why didn't they mention about, well, Moses said, Moses only says what's convenient for y'all. So that's kind of how I saw it.
That's right.
Those days, the priest only mentioned the law of Moses when it was convenient to make a point. Otherwise, yeah, I mean that's really no different what he did. If you think about it. So why wasn't that taken care of like that? So that just, again, like you were saying, just it doesn't match.
Things that, as we say, things that make you go, Things that make you go,
say things that make you go,
That's right. That's right.
That's
what
all
else?
I got, buddy.
That's it. That's it. That's all you got, Angel? All right. Very good.
That's a rarity. You better record that. That's a rarity, right?
That's
there.
all right. No, that's fine. Well, look, I tell you, this is, okay, we got Dave Tyler. There we go. All right, I'm going to let you go, Todd and Angel. You got off the hook because Dave Tyler's here. Dave Tyler, how you doing, brother? Shabbat shalom. There you go.
Hey, can you hear me, Ross?
I can hear you perfectly well, brother.
Yeah. I spoke enough last night at our Shabbat welcome, so I don't like to mess with
that's all right.
But when you just read that, something bothers me greatly about that. And I'm going to relate it to our COVID pandemic.
Okay.
Where went around saying, hey, these people were violating the rules. Well, I don't want someone else going to be a tattletale and say, hey, he was picking up wood on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
To me, that invites a lot of really bad, discussions. If you don't like somebody, hey, I saw him over there doing that.
Yeah.
And I know Doug says 2 or 3 witnesses, but if 3 people hate me, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing I don't think makes sense to me is this. And we know from studying, I won't get into all of it, but we know from studying eyewitnesses, they're not good witnesses. And there could be 10 eyewitnesses and that stuff. So the other issue for me is that, it doesn't allow for a lifetime of correcting yourself.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, number one, it was 40 years ago before. So I'm 65. So, I was a long time ago, 25 years, I did not celebrate the Sabbath. And then I have since violated the Sabbath when, well, I'm just going to say politely, it was for work, but
Yeah.
So Damon is disagreeing with me. So I just think that I'm pointing out something. I got better at Sabbath. And I think y'all have been there. So The issue is this. When I first did the Sabbath, I was laying in bed saying, can I go up and go to the bathroom? You know, because told me, I mean, you know, and about 13 hours in, I said, sorry, Lord, you're going to have to kill me in the bathroom. And, you know, all the other stuff. And here's something else that's big deal. Here's another big deal. When I was in Los Angeles, I was 20 years old, and I had to go to the emergency room on a Friday night. I was in severe pain. I thought I was going to die. And a Jewish doctor came up to me with his kippah on, and he tended to me, and he helped fix me. And was he violating the Sabbath? Because I don't think I would have made it to the next day. I don't want to get into this you know, my crazy life. I am the second most interesting man in the world. And I say that very sarcastically. But my point is, you know, firemen, doctors, you know, and so my point is, you know, you have to be careful when you interpret these things. And so for me, I've got a much more open mind about the Sabbath. And I think I enjoy the Sabbath, and that's what God intended. That's what I believe God intended for us. You know, but the other issue is, you know, we had 36 inches of snow on my roof. I had to clear some of the roof on the Sabbath, and I don't think I'm going to destroy the house will collapse and we might die. I don't think that's what the Sabbath was meant for. And these are my, after 40 years of doing it. And so my point at the end of the day is having other people turn you in. I don't know. In the jail, a snitch. It's about the civilization. How do we work with each other? And sometimes there are good people, you know, out there that see things. But I would have saw someone and addressed them and said, do you, if we were all Sabbath keepers, I would say, do you think you should be doing this on the Sabbath? I wouldn't go. And the other killer point you make is they knew what the rule was. If this linear approach is correct, which I don't think, they would know what to do. Well, let's get some damn stones and stone a guy. Well, or whatever. And so I think the interpretation, and then a long time ago, there was a guy at United Israel, Dennis Jones, as you remember. And Dennis said something to me that really made me think, because I was just getting into reading all the Levitical laws, and I'm like, man, you know, maybe Paul was right. God forbid me forever saying things, but I mean, because I think Paul's the furthest from the truth, but sometimes. But my point is this. He said, Dave, all these rules and everything, but look at the rest of how look at the rest of how the rest of the Bible, the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, how God doesn't hold them to these at this level. In other words, God is merciful and forgiving. And so again, you know, there are people that have mercy beyond what I can possibly understand. Like when someone kills your child or your wife and you forgive them, I'm not sure I could do that. And I'm bearing my soul here, but man, my gun would be cocked at least. And however, there are people that are that great, you know, and that one rabbi from the Nazareth said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. That's something I would like to achieve, but I don't have it in my soul yet. And so I think one of the things that I really liked about your lesson today, Ross, is that we've looked at these things. I'll use the Christian term, 6 ways from Sunday. But we, every time we look, there's more that comes out. And so I'll end with this. I kind of go back to the Shema and the 10 I say on every Sabbath welcome before. And for me, that's the way I live my life. And it's only God can say, David, you didn't follow these the way I meant. You can make an opinion about me, but the judgment, you know, as I named my first son, Danny L., my judge is God. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
And again, repenting and turning, my ways after all these years and understanding things. And to me, the one thing I can say, I see Clody's up here. That's great. One thing I can say is this. 10 years ago, I would have disagreed with the person I am today. 40 years ago, when we first really started looking at this stuff, I'd say, you are crazy, David.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I know.
And so I think it's a great class. And like I say, it really bothers me that other people would turn you in and say you did this. Now, if someone dies, okay, that's different.
Yeah.
But for picking up wood, that's my kind of take on it, Ross. Great class and great discussions in here, y'all.
Hey, I appreciate you, Dave. And look, while you're up, I'll tell everybody, if you're not doing so already, sign up for the newsletter. They have links because David and Patty host every Friday night a Sabbath get-together where people can just come together and discuss, and they usually put together a nice lesson, a Hebrew word of the week, and they welcome Shabbat. It's really a fun time, and those that are already part of it enjoy it. So
it's not a class. It's just we discuss things, and Nikita discussed a lot last night. Todd discussed things. Everybody. I love everybody's different opinions, and I've learned from everybody on this group. I probably learned something. I read a lot of what they say, I think that's how when a lot of us get together, we become more towards the God consciousness. So, thank y'all.
Good stuff. All right, brother. My best to you and yours, David.
All right.
And we're going to tell our YouTube audience shalom. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you are part of the Yachad and you want to come over and spend a good bit more time with us, please do so. Come on to the Zoom call if you're part of the Yachad, because we're going to log out of the YouTube stream. We'll see you next time here on Ross K. Nichols TV. Shabbat Shalom and have a beautiful week.